Hold on. Can you see that? I just left the office. Now this doesn't count 100% because I did take like an hour nap and then I took a couple hours break. So I've really only been working for the last 5 hours. But I did work, a full day before that. So I'm about to get ready to go to bed, and my morning alarm clock just went off. Actually, it usually goes off between 2:30 and 3, and it's like, hey, rise and shine. I'm like, hey, I haven't even rested yet, and I wanted to. I wasn't planning on making a video, but let me grab some vitamins. I was watching one of Andy Frisella's mashup videos, and it started bringing me back to a couple years ago when I was delivering newspapers with a broken femur, recovering from surgery, trying to make some money because I was out of work. I wasn't jobless, but I was out of work. And this is when I discovered the MFCEO podcast. And it's cool because it brings back the same feelings in me, right? And I'll be honest with you, for a long time, I was feeling kind of stuck. Like really fucking stuck. And I wasn't sure what the fuck it was. Like, I wasn't sure what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it. And to be honest with you, I still can't. I can tell you that I'm through it. I'm not stuck anymore. But I wasn't exactly sure what it was. I know a lot of it had to deal with trauma and healing, right? And seeing the unseen, especially the unseen parts of me that were keeping me stuck. But what I'm noticing is, even during that time when I was stuck, the one thing that kept me grounded, one thing that kept me moving forward, was studying and working. And a lot of people say you distract yourself with work, and there's all these other important things to do, and most of them are struggling. They're struggling. And the crazy thing is we live in a society where people struggle with smiles on, and they lie to themselves, and they lie to you, but they don't realize they're lying to you because they're lying to themselves. And so people will go around pretending as if everything's okay. I love the people who act like they have life figured out and they've never made a mistake. Those are my favorite people. I got a lot to learn from them because I make mistakes all the time. I don't have shit figured out. But what I've been noticing, just the way people engage with you, and the word hubris is coming to mind because it seems like my word of the week, and it's interesting because what I've been noticing is that hubris people who have a lot of hubris, people who have a lot of confidence. I was actually talking about this today on one of my calls to somebody we're gonna hire, I think, as a CMO. What's up, Joe? If you're watching this, you're probably not. We're basically like loud people who are loud and boisterous and outgoing. Mel Robbins was actually talking about this. These people are almost always covering up some type of insecurity, some type of flaw or lack thereof. I think I said thereof wrong. I don't think I was supposed to say thereof. Some type of flaw or lack, and usually it's a veil of ignorance, right? Or a veil of protection over their ignorance. And so there's a bunch of different ways that you can see this manifest. Me as a programmer, I see this manifest a lot, right? A lot. Because, I was telling Aziz, what's up, Aziz? I was telling him yesterday or the day before or a couple of days ago that, basically when I was a kid, one of the ways that I got punished, was I had to read the Bible. And I don't want to get into it, but I had to read the Bible. And I read the Bible for weeks at a time, sometimes months at a time. And I would do nothing but read the Bible. And you can only stare at a piece of paper for so long before you just start reading it, right? And luckily the stories in the Bible were fucking crazy. So they kept me entertained at least a little bit. I would always skip past the genealogies and shit and songs and all that type of stuff. It's boring as fuck. I like the stories. And what I realized is that actually set me up for success because I learned how to read. And a lot of people don't. And actually for the longest time, because I grew up with people who were too lazy to read and all this other type of stuff, I started believing myself that I didn't know how to read. And actually I still have this thing that comes in every time. I'm a little bit dyslexic, right? And so I have this thing that comes in whenever I'm supposed to read something that just says, no, you can't, you're not going to read that. You can't read that. And I just skip past it. So I have to force myself to go back and actually take the time to slow down and read to make sure I understand what's being said. But what I realized is I do the same thing when people are talking to me. And I'm starting to understand it's just you're mentally checking out, right? You're you're just checking out, like you're disassociating basically. And as a kid, this became my superpower, disassociation, because of how I was growing up. I needed to escape, which led me to doing drugs and all that other type of stuff, right? And I can say that now because I haven't smoked weed in like at least a week. It's probably been longer. And I'm finally coming clean of weed. And I'm not saying that weed's like a bad drug or anything, but for me, it was one of my ways to escape what I've been feeling inside, right? And what I've noticed is, I love that you can't tell when I drop my phone. So it was a way for me to escape what I was feeling inside. And what I've noticed is that you don't really escape it. You kind of just shove it down, right? And I didn't realize that this is what I was doing when I was smoking weed. But now, because it's so subtle, right? But now I understand. There's a bunch of different ways that you can smoke weed, but for me, the most part was I was smoking weed every time I got anxious and every time I got a little bit of stress or tension in me. And I noticed this actually in one of my employees, who every time you talk to, you'd be like, and I'm like, yeah, what the fuck's wrong with you? And he'd start talking, and he'd be like, and I used to do the same thing. It actually put me in the hospital. But mine was like twitching and shit, right? And what I realized is, after listening to Michael Singer's Surrender Experiment, is that these things are called samskaras, right? And it's mostly because of what we experienced in the past lifetime or this lifetime, that we internalize, that we shove down. I can actually feel it coming up now. One of these things that we shove down, and every time something happened that we didn't like or whatever, instead of letting it out, for whatever circumstance or whatever reason, we weren't able to process the emotion at that time. So we just push it down. But eventually that stuff starts piling up, and it wants to come out, because by nature, everything grows up and out, right? And so if things are growing up and out, then the stuff that's down there holding shit down is going to be growing up and out as well. And what I was doing was by smoking weed or doing any drug, was I was pushing it ever so subtly back down. And I would say, and actually I do this with breathing exercises too. So there's a lot of ways that you can resist this force, right? And that's what I was doing. I was doing it ever so subtly, but I was still doing it. And what I realized is I like my brain was like, I couldn't ever really think clearly. And I would think that I'm so clear and all this type of stuff, and I do meditation and yoga. Meanwhile, I'm fucking smoking weed while I'm doing it. And I'd be doing meditation and yoga, and I'm like, oh, weed helps me meditate. Weed helps me relax, and it helps me process all this shit. Which, actually, it did, because to be honest with you, like, my nervous system was fucking out of whack. It still is. It gets upset so easily now, right? And that's one of the things that we have to deal with is how to regulate our nervous system, because first of all, nobody's going to do it for us, and most of us have, excuse me, see, there it is, most of us have dysregulated nervous systems. I was eating something too, so but that's one of the things coming up, right? I could have chosen to not burp. This happens when you hold in a fart too, by the way. It's basically the natural process of life that you end up resisting. And it's funny because I titled this, The Importance of Actually Doing the Work. What you realize is, eventually, at a certain point, when you stop resisting, look, my 3 a.m. alarm is going off. 3 a.m. At a certain point, when you stop resisting, life kind of just happens for you. But in addition to that, you end up becoming more capable of doing the stuff that you've been working so hard to do, right? Now, here's what the main point that I wanted to make was, even while you're struggling through this stuff, and even while you're self-medicating, and even while your life isn't going as you want, and you're still resisting, at least the pain that you're feeling inside, you're kind of trying to push it away because you don't want to feel it, all that type of stuff. Even through that, there's going to be things that you're doing that you know you're supposed to be doing that are driving you, and you might not be sure exactly why, but it's driving you, and you feel like it needs to be done. Nobody else is going to do it except for you, all this type of stuff, right? And the truth is that stuff actually serves you, right? And so we like to think we're in control. We like to think we know what we have in store for our life and what we're going to be doing 5, 10, 15 years from now, and all this type of stuff. But the reality is we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? And so based on that, all we have is like a couple gut feelings and a couple thoughts that seem important, that seem relevant to what we think is the future. And the deeper understanding of this is that there's always some part of you that's always there, right? And so that part of you is going to do whatever it can to take care of you no matter what. And it's never going to go against your will because it respects you. Let's put it that way, right? Like, that part of you respects you, so it wants you to be ready, right? It doesn't want to force anything on you. But what it'll do is it'll start whispering to you, hey, maybe you should look over here. Hey, maybe you should look over here. Hey, why don't you Google that thing? Why don't you look into this? You're curious about this. Why don't you go check that out? And then eventually what you'll realize is you become so enveloped in this thing that you're looking into that you kind of forget about what you're experiencing, what you're processing, the trauma you may or may not have. And while you're doing this stuff is naturally going to come up. And for me, it would manifest as I couldn't understand the code I was writing. I couldn't understand the concepts that I was learning. And I would learn them and learn them and learn them and learn them, and I still couldn't understand it. Now, taking this back to the Bible, right, I learned how to read. I learned how to understand. But because I was going through so much pain and trauma at the time, that's something else that just came up. Because I was going through so much pain and trauma at the time, I didn't understand the importance of it. I just knew that I did it. So for me, as a kid, I used to escape into books. I'd just sit there and read all day, or I'd play video games, right? Mostly books, though. I lost myself in books a lot, right? And what I realized is it was definitely my escape. But in addition to that, reading books gave me context for life, right? And understanding these books, understanding the authors and why they wrote them, getting lost in the stories, they teach you about life. And the fact that you're reading it gives a little bit of a deeper understanding, right? And it was this deeper understanding, this process of reading the book that I took into school, right? And it served me very well because I wasn't a good student. But what I was a good reader, and I could retain the information that I read, right? Because I would read fast enough to get through it, but slow enough to understand it. And it was just my speed. Now, mind you, I ended up failing fucking English in 9th grade. I almost failed English in 8th grade. But those are, it wasn't reading comprehension that I was failing. It was basically writing and all that type of stuff. So going back to programming, right? I started to learn to go to the documentation, to go to, like, there's a bunch of different ways you can learn it. You can watch YouTube videos, you can, take online courses, you can go on Udemy, you can go to a boot camp, you can go to college. But when it comes down to it, every single thing that you're trying to use has some sort of documentation to it, right? And then there's probably 100 books on the specific thing that you're trying to do that are well documented, that reference the documentation. Well, most people don't read the documentation. Most people just watch a YouTube video on how to do this. Most people just take a quick course or go to a boot camp. And they fail to get the deeper understanding of what they're doing. And because of that, they end up not being able to basically work effectively because they don't understand deeply what they're doing. So, they have this idea of first principles. You need to understand everything from a first principles point of view. Well, in computer science and in programming, that's super important, right? Unless you're writing in Python, and fuck you guys. Just kidding. But you need to understand the fundamentals, right? First principles, fundamentals of programming or of computer science or of the library that you're using, right? And most people just learn the concepts. They don't learn the theory or the execution behind it because they assume that when they need it, they'll put it into place. And for me, that was probably, it was like the number one thing that I knew what was wrong. And so when I'm programming, when I'm coding, when I'm learning how, I take forever to get through one course because I code along, I stop the video, make sure I understand what the hell I'm writing, and I don't ever just copy and paste code. I make sure that what I'm writing is making sense to me. And for the longest time, especially while I was smoking weed, I might have clarity for 5-10 minutes, but eventually I'd have brain fog set in and I wouldn't be able to understand what the hell I just wrote in code from the concept that I learned 10 minutes ago. And then I'd find myself having to go back and relearn this stuff. And what I realized is it's not me who can't learn. It's this thing inside my mind that's trying to get out, that's trapping it basically, right? It's taking up all my mental bandwidth. And when I would get in arguments with people, it's the same thing. When I worry about shit, it's the same thing. And so you only have so much mental energy for the day. And if you end up spending it on stupid shit, then you don't get it back. You gotta wait till the fucking next day, basically. And what I've come to understand is even beyond this energy that you may or may not have, a lot of people just aren't willing to put in the fucking work. I mean, all excuses aside, and I got a fucking lot of excuses, right? I can make an excuse from today until Sunday and not run out of shit and be 100% truthful. But, I keep telling people, like, it seems fucking crass, seems harsh, but, like, nobody gives a fuck about your excuses. Nobody cares, right? And actually, well, this is the thing that I always tell people. People are fucking happy. Deep down, they're laughing at you, right? Like, they're glad that you're not challenging yourself and that you're not doing the work, because that means that, one, they get to feel better about themselves because they automatically feel superior to you, and if you're not doing the work, then you're not going to be showing them up, right? And then two, their prejudice of you, their prejudgments of you are now proven correct because they never liked you to begin with. And it's not like that for everybody, but geez, it's like that for a lot of people, right? And it's both ways. So I find myself always looking out into the crowd and realizing that the way that I separate myself is because I'm willing to fucking work harder. I'm willing to understand things deeply. I'm willing to take my time. I'm willing to put off gratification. I'm willing to charge nothing for my services, so I have the opportunity to learn. I'm willing to be humble, basically, right? Because I know who I am. I know where I come from, and I know all this stuff. And I'm talking now at a physical level. Like, I know who I am physically. I know where I come from physically. I didn't come from shit, right? So the only thing that got me here was my ability to work, and that's it. That's it. There's nothing else. And what I realize is I've been doing the same fucking thing since I was in high school. The same fucking thing. I got promoted to fucking shift trainer at McDonald's because I was the only one who paid attention to detail. I was the only one who cared when the new people came in if they got trained up on their job, right? I got promoted to fucking supervisor at UPS because I was one of the few who really gave a fuck about what they're doing, who wasn't there just to piss off and all that type of shit. And slowly what I started to understand is I always thought that I was a natural born leader, but I don't think it's that. I think the people that find themselves in leadership positions are the ones who are always willing to put in the work. And it's 3 a.m. right now. I haven't slept yet. I just got in from the office. Right? It's I'm fucking tired, but I put in the work, and I know it's gonna pay off. I know it's gonna pay off, and it's not that it's gonna pay off for me anymore. Now there's other people involved, and there's a lot more to this, and that's what I started to realize is this shit ain't about me. It's not about me at all. I used to think it was. I used to think, oh, I want to be successful, I want to make all this money, I want to fucking have all this freedom and all this type of stuff. But the more you get into this, the deeper you get entrenched in doing the work and in satisfying this deep curiosity that you have in yourself, the more you start to realize that this shit is bigger than you. This is bigger than the fucking people you're with. Like, it's the collective calling you forward. And your work matters. If it didn't matter, then you wouldn't be doing work. You would just be working on a hobby. You'd be fucking doing some type of thing that makes you feel good. But if you're doing work, then there's other people involved. And they're, the work we live in nowadays, or the world we live in nowadays, your work has the potential to influence millions of people. Whether you directly influence them, or something you build influences them, or somebody you influences them. Yeah, this shit is real. It's real, and it's fucking powerful. And it's understanding the power that we all have inside of us, and not that foo-foo-y shit like, oh, power. No, it's understanding that a butterfly can't flap its wings in China without a fucking breeze blowing in New York. Right? Like, it's understanding the interconnectedness of the world that we live in, the culture that we live in, and the nature of our species is interconnectedness, right? And so this is why, Gandhi or Mother Teresa, one of the two, said, lose yourself in the service of others. And it's not about, like, subordinating your identity or giving up your identity. It's about understanding that this shit is not about you. And it never was. And the thing is, for me, I always thought it was about me, and I couldn't get myself to get over myself because I'm like, fuck me. I don't want to do this shit for me. I don't want to fucking put myself out there. I don't want to talk on fucking camera. Like, I used to judge myself when I'm making videos because I didn't want to make the fucking video. But you know what happened? On the videos where I judge myself the worst, I have people fucking messaging me, thanking me for making the fucking video. And that shit makes me feel good, but it gives me perspective on what the fuck I'm doing here. Because at a certain point, you realize that it's really not about you. And as soon as you can get over yourself, like Pastor Buddy says, as soon as you can get over yourself, you can start serving. And as soon as you start serving, you become successful. Because servants are naturally successful because they're always taken care of. And when you find yourself serving everybody, everybody takes care of you. And so you end up not having to fight so hard to get food on your table, to keep your lights on, to take care of yourself, because it's a natural byproduct of what you're already doing. And people will make sure that you're taken care of because you're taking care of them. That's reciprocity. It's human nature. And I think we really forget the importance of working together, of being part of a team, of being part of something that's greater than ourselves. And a lot of times we have to be by ourselves for years and years and years on end before we get the opportunity to be a part of something like that. And the only thing I have to say to that is fucking good, man. Good, because you need to understand who you are before you start trying to commit and subordinate yourself to a fucking will that you perceive as higher than yours. Because, boy, that's naive. That's naive as fuck. Right? And so you don't want to be one of these fucking naive people, which I was, by the way, going out and just fucking committing yourself to any cause and not understanding what's really going on. And a lot of people do that. I've done it myself, right? Trying to be part of something greater than you. When you realize that all you need to do is turn to the person fucking next to you, turn to the person you see down the street, just offer your assistance. Just, how can I help you? How can I help you? And it's in that process that you get the opportunity to fucking start working. And then it's all part of the process from there, man. Like, it's not smooth sailing, but the destination is almost always guaranteed unless you quit. And if you quit, you better start again on something new, because death is following closely.